Hello, everybody.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. We're going to take just a minute to let everyone in.
Hello, hello.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good afternoon, good evening.
Good afternoon, yes. Good evening. Good everything. How about that?
Yes,
Right.
correct.
That's right.
We have much going on, but we also have much to be thankful for.
You know, I agree wholeheartedly, and I am grateful.
Grateful for both of you to be hosting this for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for all the work you do behind the scenes that we do not know about, but we suspect.
Thank you. Oh, what kind voices to hear and be greeted with. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and whether you're sitting or standing, in my case, for a little stretch. We wanted to center ourselves before we jump into the content of the meeting. We do still have people joining us, but we are trying to, limit. Now our meetings are only 90 minutes, and so we have to kind of go straight into business and get into the program. So we'll just take a little pause, 30 seconds or so, to just regroup and bring our intention here to the meeting, to our screens, since that's where we are right now. So if we can just do that for just a little bit. So welcome everyone. Hello, this is our December monthly meeting of NGO CSW New York. I hope everyone's well. I hope Pamela, so Pamela and I join you at this meeting, that last one of the year. Would you like to say something to Pamela?
Hello, everyone, and we are grateful to have you with us and that we made it through another year. And we really do hope that next year will be stronger and better, and we will be able to push forward against the pushback.
Yes, let's definitely do that. And everyone, please take care over the holidays. I say that now. Yeah, take care, be kind to yourself and your body. As you finish the year, it's a very hectic time of year. We want to all be welcoming 2025 healthy. So the world needs us to be. So the first thing, as far as updates for the committee, NGO CSW is part of an advisory group of the ECOSOC president. So the ECOSOC president is planning a partnership forum, which is on February 5th. And there was an advisory group meeting about, they wanted our feedback on what type of, forum we would like and what we envision. And there's several people, of course, as part of the advisory group, but I wanted to alert you because the registration for that is now open. It closes on January 17th. Of course, you can watch on web TV, but if you're physically coming here, it's only a day, it's February 5th, but wanted to flag that. Another advisory group that NGO CSW is a part of is the DSG, the Secretary General's Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed has an advisory group to roll out the GEAP plan, which is the Gender Equality Acceleration Plan. The GEAP is a UN system-wide gender equality plan. So as civil societies, women's major group and the committee, NGO CSW, were invited on the advisory group to, of course, inform how they can roll that plan out. At the same time, to also raise awareness among civil society of the plan itself, which was officially launched on International Women's Day this year, and now they've actually publicized it. And so we will, I would think we will also share it, but that has been just recently rolled out within the UN system. Again, we believe, this is a very good opportunity for us as civil society, as we want to walk the talk first in the practices of the UN itself, of course, in addition to all that we're doing in our work. And then the last update is from me would be on the CSW revitalization. So the committee, executive committee of NGO CSW held a roundtable with around 25 member states at the beginning of the month to talk about CSW revitalization, what their thoughts were. They were mainly gender experts from missions that came, and it was under Chatham House rule, and we talked just generally what the feeling was around CSW revitalization. I guess the one big takeaway I would say is that they really want concrete proposals from us. So they cannot be vague, broad statements, but something that's very tangible. And also, given the current climate, the political climate, that we have to be also realistic on what we can achieve. So that's all I will say at this point on that, and I'll pass it to Pam.
Okay, thank you, Ivy. I have just a few announcements. The virtual parallel event applications have been extended, and they're going to close February 21st. Now, we've had some issues with organizers who unsubscribed from the MailChimp, not receiving their acceptance letters. If you have not received your acceptance letter for your in-person parallel event, and you have unsubscribed from our MailChimp, you have to go back and resubscribe, because all of our communications go out via MailChimp. The Artisan Fair applications close January 6th. The exhibit booth and handbook ads applications are now open, and the closing date is February 21st. And the registration to the virtual portal, which is Hoover again, I know we're all anxious, that is going to be at the beginning of the new year. And I'm going to turn it over to Rosa for a short ARG CSW revitalization survey.
Great. Thank you, Pamela. Thank you, Ivy. Welcome, everyone. So good to see all of you here. I am the vice chair of NGO CSW, and I'm also one of the co-chairs of the Advocacy and Research Group. And as many of you who've been following know, that the Advocacy and Research Group develops concrete recommendations for every CSW. Because this CSW is dealing with Beijing Plus 30, and 12 plus critical areas of concern, we have focused ours on the very important issue of CSW revitalization. And so, Ivy, that was a perfect segue. The CSW revitalization has been proposed by the Pact for the Future and has been talked about much in CSW circles. So we have something for you to do today. We, as the ARG, have developed 10 recommendations. We've culled from our survey earlier in the year. And we've worked diligently as a drafting group to bring you these. It's sort of an informal survey. We want to get the temperature of the constituency. We want to see what you're thinking. So I think our colleagues, Rachel Mads, are going to put the link to an informal survey only available at this monthly meeting. And it'll be available during the length of the meeting, but the introduction will be now, so you have time to do it. And we ask you to pick the top 6 recommendations. We usually provide 6 recommendations. We might extend it to 10. There is room if your priority is not reflected in these, but this is based on a lot of the work that we've been doing. And thank you to the ARG members. Please identify yourself in the chat if you've been working. And just to let you all know, we are not taking new ARG members for this CSW, but for the following one. We've already developed this group, just so that you know. But if you are interested, please put your name and we will be in touch. So I hope you have good thinking and good fun with this. And please, if there's anything else there that is not reflected, please put it in the other category. Thank you so much. Back to co-chairs.
So I think, Rosa, that form, we can answer it at any point, since it's not a poll on this Zoom. So
Right.
because there's a lot of things to read, no one has to feel rushed to answer them. I'm just
Exactly. I
Okay.
was rushed to give those instructions, but
Thank you.
it will be during this meeting where you can fill it out and take your time and just review them at your leisure during this time. Thank you. We really appreciate your input. Thanks, Ivy, for that.
Thank you, everyone. So I think I'm going to be handing over the agenda to Rachel now and Beck.
Hi, everyone. So the global youth, sorry, we got a little bit of an echo. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. So the Global Youth Fellows have been doing their master classes. They just had a recent master class on fundraising and grant writing, which was really informative, very exciting for them. And they will be working on their youth prep series, which will be coming up in January and February. And those will be open to all. So please keep an eye out for them. We'll be advertising them on all of our platforms. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. So today we have with us Johannes Lang, who is joining us from UN Women and will be giving us some updates on CSW. Is Johannes here? I think. Oh, I don't think is he here? I don't know if he's here, actually. I don't see him in the participants. So we might have to come back to him later at the end. So I'll pass it to you, Pamela.
Thank you, Ivy. And I also want to thank all member organizations who applied to host a monthly meeting. We received a number of very fine applications, but we couldn't select all. So we are pleased that the application that most met our criteria was from Elsa Marie da Silva, CEO of the Red Dot Foundation. Today's program on AI, media, and ethics perfectly ties together our two focal areas of media and human rights two of the critical areas identified in the Beijing Platform for Action. Elsa Marie is not able to be with us today, but in her stead, Jillian D'Souza Nazareth, who is an executive committee member, she will be the host in Elsa Marie's absence. So Jillian, the floor is yours, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Ivy, Pam, and Rosa. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's session on artificial intelligence, violence against women online, and ethics. My name is Jillian D'Souza Nazareth. I represent the Red Dot Foundation at the UN and serve as treasurer for this committee. The Beijing Declaration cites violence against women as critical areas of concern. 30 years later, in March of next year, the UN will celebrate what is touted as the most progressive blueprint for achieving gender equality. SDG 5 has defined Target 5.2 as the elimination of all forms of violence against women and girls in the public and private sphere. Today's panel will explore challenges posed to women, our rights, and our safety, especially those posed by the emergence of new technologies and AI. Our stellar panel this morning is moderated by Professor Olga Jurasz, Professor of Law at the Open University in the UK. She's also Director of the Center for Protecting Women Online, focusing on research, policy engagement, and creating social impact in relation to women's online safety. Professor Jurasz is a member of the Tech UK Violence Against Women and Girls Digital and Tech Working Group, and also a senior fellow of the Higher Education Academy. She serves as an independent expert to the Council of Europe's Committee of Experts on Combating Technology-Facilitated Violence Against Women and Girls. Olga, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Jillian. It's a great pleasure to be here today, and thank you for this very, very kind and lengthy introduction. It's really an honor to be here and to be able to present some of quite exciting research to all of you, and to also explore it further in Q&A. We've got three amazing speakers, so I will not take too much of the time. I merely wanted to set a little bit of a scene and perhaps share some observations or reflections, particularly on the state of play at the moment as it relates to the regulation or legal and policy responses, rather, to online tech, digital violence against women and girls. As Jillian has said, today's event will prompt some reflections, I'm sure, if not some critical thoughts on the intersection of technology, violence, and women's rights, which is certainly not anymore a new topic. But what we see is that this is nonetheless an issue that remains largely unresolved all around the world, and also poses a huge challenge to law and policymakers. Online and tech-facilitated violence against women has been recognized internationally, including at the UN level, not least by the Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women, also by the CEDAW Committee, and some of the supranational institutions, such as the Council of Europe or the European Commission. At a national level, we also observe that more and more states are embarking upon a legal journey, so to speak, to create online safety laws or legal regimes, which unfortunately only in some aspects involve a reflection or consideration of gendered aspects of online safety, particularly where it relates to online violence against women and girls. In the UK alone, we've got Online Safety Act, which came into force last year, and which is hailed as a world-leading piece of legislation on online safety. Yet it does very little, in my view, to actually protect women from online harms. And this is especially so in relation to content that is harmful, but is not illegal, which frankly, let's face it, accounts for quite a lot of women's experiences of online violence and online abuse. What's more, Online Safety Act missed the opportunity, or I would say grossly missed an opportunity, to articulate legal duties of platforms and platform providers with regard to assessing, minimizing, and preventing online harms to women and girls, of course, leaving a huge responsibility gap in that. Instead, Ofcom, that is the nominated regulator, is due to provide guidance on this matter to platforms, which sadly will not be legally binding and very much unenforceable as far as legal regulation is concerned. So in terms of reflections, I think we're looking, or we're observing stark contrasts in a number of areas, and I just wanted to highlight three. Firstly, at least for me, the contrast between the power of platforms, or the power of allowing themselves inaction in relation to prevention of online harms to women, versus wide-ranging impacts of online violence on women and girls that are deeply felt every day. Secondly, contrast between commitments to tackle online violence against women and girls and actual legal action. And last but not least, contrast between the actual scale of experiences of women and girls online and impact of these experiences versus what the law captures and officially recognizes as harmful and therefore worth of addressing. So that sounds quite critical of the law and policy, which it is, and I think it's I still stand by these observations. But we also need to remember that whilst we need laws and policies to address online violence against women and girls that are designed with women's experiences in mind, that are designed for women, it is important equally to remember that we are dealing with a social phenomenon, and law is sadly only one of the tools in the toolbox to address it, to dismantle it. Therefore, I would say we need to ensure that we draw much greater synergies between disciplines and also across sectors to actually move the dial on preventing as well as responding to such a huge issue as online harms experienced by women. So it's my great pleasure to actually lead a center that is moving forward on this cross-disciplinary and cross-sectoral work in this area. And to build further on that, it's absolute pleasure to introduce today's panel and to chair today's discussions that at the very least I can promise will provoke thoughts and further discussion on the scale of online misogyny and online violence against women, women's experiences online, the role of AI in perpetration of online violence, but also the power of tech and AI to be a force for good in tackling sexual and gender-based violence. So without further ado, I wanted to briefly turn to our three speakers. Dr. Tracy Farrell, who is also based here at the Open University, Dr. Paula Reyero Lobo, also from the Open University, and Camila Gomide from Red Dot Foundation, that is also our center's partner. So Tracy, I will turn to you next. So I think the order that we've got is Tracy, Paula, and then Camila. I think the format of this session is meant to be fairly conversational. So we've got shorter presentations from each of the speakers with, I think, some questions that will be prompted by me to link in between. But Tracy, it's off to you now.
I hope everybody can hear me okay. Really, thank you so much for the invitation to join your group today. Media and human rights for women is an incredibly enormous issue, and I'm joining this meeting today as a social scientist who conducts critical explorations of technology and media. And I just wanted to share some research insights that came from combining social science with computation into some powerful studies of misogyny online and at scale. And two of the issues that I would say appear often in our work are about representation and the price of advocacy. So as all of you will know, women are subjected to sexualization, objectification, vilification in the media, particularly women who are darker skinned or who are considered as coming from a minority background in whatever context they're living, working, otherwise engaging. But women also use technology, as you also know, for lots of advocacy work and awareness building. And social media in particular has become a place where activism and feminist movements are happening, but obviously also a place where misinformation and hate and aggression toward women is occurring in parallel. So as we only have a short time, I'm just going to jump right in. And if you have other questions, we can discuss it in the Q&A. So when I started in the field of social data science, as it's referred to commonly, the first topic that my team that I joined was looking at was actually extremism. And I think at the time, the focus was very much on the so-called jihadist extremism. But at that time, what we were seeing was that a lot more of the evidence was kind of pointing toward the far right as the bigger threat. So alongside my colleague, Professor Miriam Fernandez, who works with Olga at the Center for Protecting Women Online, we began to look at some cases of far-right extremism. And in particular, sorry? Oh, someone's microphone's still on. In particular, I was really struck with the rise of popularity of characters like Andrew Tate, who sells openly misogynistic ideas to an increasingly youthful audience. And there were also kind of several high-profile events. There was the 2014 Isla Vista killings, the 2018 Toronto van attack, where the manifestos of those perpetrators explicitly mention extreme misogynistic viewpoints as motivating their actions. And both perpetrators in those two cases specifically discussed incel ideology and engaging with incel groups online, which you might have heard of. Basically, the term incel is a portmanteau of the words involuntarily and celibate. And it actually originated from a queer woman who really wanted to create a safe space online for people who were really struggling to find love or who were unhappy about the way that they looked, to just be able to have community with one another and find support. But over time, as can happen, the community changed, and it was shaped by lots of different groups coming together in a loose confederation online that we call the manosphere, which I'm sure also many of you are familiar with. And the manosphere includes groups like incels, but also groups like Men Going Their Own Way, which is a group of men that prefer not to have the company of women in their lives. A lot of them have had negative experiences in the divorce courts or family courts. A lot of them have like personal grievances against their ex-partners. Groups like pickup artists also engage in the manosphere, talking about different ways to manipulate women into sexual encounters. And in our research, we wanted to understand more about this community mixing within the manosphere. And we wanted to understand its potential as a radicalizing space where men might go initially to find comfort, but where they wind up in online groups that are increasingly hostile to women. So in our first study, we looked at 7 different groups with connections to the manosphere, including several incel-related groups. We were looking on the Reddit platform, and we wanted to understand what is the strength and the evolution of misogynistic ideas across these different online communities. And to tackle that question, we basically, and this is where the social science piece comes in, we derived categories, so types of misogyny from different feminist studies. And we tried to translate these categories into lexicons. So like the type of speech that might be more closely related to each type of misogyny. And then we used natural language processing to automatically track the emergence of these topics and the evolution of these topics as types of misogyny within and across the different communities. We gathered data from the communities from the time they started until January 2019. So that was about 300,000 conversations and 6 million comments in those conversations. That's a lot of data. But what we found was that hostility was indeed expanding in these communities over time, becoming increasingly more violent. and that the rhetoric of violence and misogyny were often coupled together. We saw terms like hit, kill, cut, rape occurring with a high level of frequency in comparison to other words. We saw users from banned groups joining unbanned groups and immediately turning up the heat. And when we published this work, we had so many comments from women about the relief in being able to quantify this problem at scale. And on the back of that work, we had lots of conversations with different people involved in the government or local organizing about whether or not misogyny was its own form of extremism. And I'm sure some of you have been part of these discussions as well. So one of the things that came out over and over again in these studies is the amount of vitriol that was specifically directed at women of color. They were portrayed by some men in these groups as race traitors or gold diggers, basically putting the weight of many real intersectional challenges for men of color, like racism and the disposability of men, on the shoulders of women from their own ethnic groups. And that led us to explore hate and misogyny received by women, particularly racialized women, as a separate and critical issue, and it still very much is. So one of our PhD students, Joseph Kwarteng, who couldn't be here with us today, he took this work forward with his exploration of misogynoir. And misogynoir is misogyny that's specifically directed at Black women. And it's more than just racism plus sexism. It's very specific. So Black women are fetishized. They're treated as more robust or resilient than their white women counterparts. They tend to be adultified and sexualized earlier. And Joseph's research shows just how difficult it is to spot that particular type of misogyny because it's very contextual. And that's not easy for a computer to capture using specific terms. You have to know who's saying what in each circumstance. And that challenge is compounded when Black women wishing to discuss their experiences of hate and harassment in online spaces are caught up in these broad, simplistic content moderation algorithms that try to detect hateful comments. So it becomes challenging even to speak about race as a category of discrimination. I know that Paula's planning to talk to you about bias and hate speech detection algorithms later. But in a similar set of studies that I was involved in at the University of Sheffield, we also found that women MPs in the UK, particularly if they're from a minoritized or racialized background, they receive a disproportionate amount of personal attacks just for talking about regular topics of their job or what they were hired to do. And Sheffield found this also true of women journalists, particularly those reporting on topics that might be related to feminism or feminist issues. And for me, just to close on this, because I know I'm running out of time, all of that is a signal of fear, and it's fear of the power that women have protected over centuries of attempts to erase it. And I encourage you all to take that message away from this talk. If you're a woman online, you're a product of your ancestors' struggle and you inherited all of their power. And as Joseph has written in all of his papers, these attempts to silence and contain, the best defense against that is to be visible, loud, and rebellious. And I hope you will all continue to do so. Thanks very much.
That's a beautiful reflection, Tracy. I was wondering, as we're kind of looking into the future, I think, as you said, there are, I think, generations of women who have been speaking out. And like you said, to be a woman online today, even if you are attacked for just speaking, your opinion, you do stand on the shoulders of those women who also spoke out in the past. It's just that context is quite different. I was wondering if you could reflect, perhaps also for the benefit of the audience, where this research has taken you now. I know this is now research you've done in the past, so I just wanted to bring you to kind of now and future, to kind of see where you have taken this forward.
Sure. I mean, I think my experiences, some of which Paula will probably talk about the bias in machine learning and approaches with AI, because I also worked on misinformation for a while, and it suffers from many of the same problems. It really made me start to pick apart the whole thing of AI and the fact that it is still very much based on that still whiteness is such a foundation for AI, and white Western morality is such a foundation for AI ethics. And in my project now, which is called Shifting Power, we're really trying to explore conceptualizations of AI and what harm or benefit people think AI could bring or cause from other parts of the world that are not in the global north, because we've heard enough from the global north about these issues. So we're really just trying to understand like what other ways of understanding harm might exist elsewhere. So that's where I'm taking it now. And in the future, who knows, maybe more ways of dealing with the plurality of points of view on this, maybe giving a little bit more power to people who are more likely to experience the negative downstream effects of artificial intelligence. So I'm at the beginning I have a Future Leaders Fellowship. So I'm at the beginning of what I hope will be a 7-year process of investigating this topic. So remains to be seen.
Thank you so much, Tracy. And now I think we move to Paula. I know Tracy already gave us a little bit of a preview of some of the topics that you will be covering, but kind of, what are your reflections on the intersections between, particularly online hate, online misogyny that women are increasingly still experience online, especially when they just want to participate or have their voices heard?
Yeah, so thank you so much for inviting me to this panel. I'm really excited to talk about this intersection on AI and online violence against women and ethics. I came to talk about one of the main challenges for the ethical and responsible use of AI, which is bias, as Tracy mentioned. I have been working on this topic for the past 4 years, so I want to discuss bias with highlights of some of the work that I have done at the Open University or my colleagues are working on at the moment. So bias, in simple terms, occurs when an AI system is making a decision that is favoring one person or group as compared to others. And one famous case was the Compass algorithm that you may know about, which was a risk assessment system used in the US that was found to overestimate the relapse into criminal behavior of Black as compared to white people. And as AI is being more extensively used, this can impact and can lead to unfair outcomes for women in many aspects of their lives. So where does bias come from? Bias is everywhere, but bias can emerge in AI at any stage of the development of an AI system, from the collection and the processing of data to the training of an AI model to the processing of the model outputs. So, for example, if an AI system is used to detect hate speech towards women online and is using data from one group, like cisgender women, it will be less effective as detecting hate towards other groups. As Tracy mentioned, intersectionality is even more challenging, but this is one way that bias can emerge. Or in the contrary, if the AI system is having a lot of examples from one group, a lot of hate speech examples of one group, it can also become biased because it may incorrectly detect the content as being hate speech. This was a famous case with Google's Perspective API that was flagging content like my friend is gay or I am a Black woman as being hate speech. So to address this challenge and ensure that we can use AI to provide safer spaces for women online, we have been focusing on enriching and improving the data that is used to train hate speech detection systems to improve the identification of the groups that are being targeted by hate speech. So training systems that not only identify hate speech, but which gender groups are being targeted by the hate speech. And this can improve the AI systems in 2 ways. First, by enabling an AI system to identify which part of the content is targeting gender, so that humans can better understand the predictions and not only have scores, which is a critical issue in the responsible use of AI. And also we did a study where we helped humans that annotate the data to better understand hate speech, because many AI systems rely on human annotations, in this case of whether content is hate speech or is targeting gender. But to ensure that the annotations are unbiased and are accurate, it is very important to have a diverse and representative group of people from different gender groups to make sure that they understand the task, the context where this text is being said, and also what is the meaning of the hate speech terminology, because as Tracy mentioned, this is very contextual, very nuanced, and people are not normally aware of the meaning of these terms. So this has been one side of the problem. Another side is making sure that the use of AI is safe for women, because AI is used in many aspects, and so it is very important to make sure that systems will be unbiased and not discriminate them. So one common approach to reduce bias is to remove sensitive information such as gender, to ensure that AI systems are not basing the decision on this information. This is a way to avoid that historical biases are introduced in the AI systems, like, for example, women being less successful at getting a job in a specific company or receiving a loan. And so one problem with this approach is that there are other attributes that act as a proxy for this sensitive information. For example, maternity leave or gender. So even when you remove this information from your data, the AI system can learn or infer this information from other attributes. So identifying these proxy attributes is really critical to avoid that the systems or that this bias is embedded in the AI models. And removing the indirect representation of gender can improve the fairness and the reliability of the data that is used to train AI models, when this information should not influence the decisions. And to conclude, to bring this to a conclusion, I want to highlight one common challenge for mitigating bias, which is the lack of access to this sensitive information. This can be due to privacy concerns, or individuals being reluctant to share this information, or regulatory constraints for the collection and storage of personal data. So it is really important for governments and regulatory bodies to provide clear standards, to make sure that from a technical perspective is possible to address bias and fairness. So just to bring all of this together, I want to say that avoiding bias and harm is a critical element for aligning AI systems to ethical principles. And so in view for a safer future online for women and girls, it is very important to implement fairness assessment and bias mitigation strategies that ensure that we can use AI to promote safer spaces for women, as well as to ensure that the use of AI is being safe for women. So that is my conclusion.
Paula, I think essentially what I heard you advocating for is perhaps what our colleague Miriam would say is the more responsible and more ethical AI that also works for women, not only against them. And I just wanted to really prompt your response or your reflection on the issue of AI regulation of AI. I mean, here in Europe, we now have AI. I mean, I say here in Europe, I'm actually based in the UK. But in the European Union context, we have AI Act that, of course, again has been kind of marked as a main attempt to kind of regulate AI in Europe. Yet again, it does very little in relation to intersection of gender and AI, as well as gender and other characteristics, as well as AI. I was wondering what your thoughts are on the role of the law in regulating AI. Do you think there is any real possibility of that being enforceable, of creating an actual good regulation of AI, or do you think this regulatory attempts would come from elsewhere rather than the law itself?
Well, I firmly believe what you say in the introduction to this panel, that it's very important to do this in a cross-disciplinary and in a cross-disciplinary way. I think that regulation is really important to take it and not to move too fast, so that you are acting once that the harm is done, but you try to prevent or avoid this from happening, which is what we should take. Regulation is a way to being able to prevent the harms from happening and taking more. I see it as being able to shift more where AI is going and not let it evolve itself to become something and then react to it, but rather take a proactive approach. So I think that the AI Act is a huge is the first regulation on AI, and it's really important, and it is as important to foresee these challenges from a regulatory perspective, but also ensure that the team has people that can make this actionable and implement the law into practical. But I see it as a combination that needs both regulation and many other disciplines to ensure that the regulation is you can actually implement it and it doesn't become too abstract or difficult to put it in action, which is the goal.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think that's a very nice transition to Camila's talk. So Camila is going to take us a completely different direction. Maybe not completely, still on topic, but show us perhaps a different face of AI and tech. And Camila, you will be talking to our audience about perhaps how AI and tech can be utilized as a force for good, and drawing on some of the Red Dot Foundation's work in this area. So Camila, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I decided to twist things a little bit, and I have a really quick presentation, and I'm timing myself, so I promise that I'll be on time. So thank you so much, Olga, for the invitation. Thank you so much for the space. So yeah, I will be talking a little bit more towards the positive outcomes, and it was, I believe, as you said, a really nice segue from Paula's speech about how do we regulate it, right? And how it has to be active. We have to take action and not just wait for that regulation to come from one specific space. And that's what we're doing through Red Dot Foundation. So I do have a few case studies that I wanted to mention. But just to set up context, Red Dot Foundation is a nonprofit organization based in the US and has a sister organization in India. And our goal is to end violence against women and girls through education and advocacy by using crowdsourced data for citizen action. And one of the questions that we ask ourselves the most is, how do we make spaces safer and accessible through data and technology? A lot of what I heard from Paula, as well as whenever we use AI, we have to know what type of data we're using to train it and who are the people training it as well to make sure that we're reducing that bias as well. And we try to do that as much as we can through Safe City. So when we talk about sexual and gender-based violence, we're talking about an invisible issue, and we try to make it visible through Safe City. So Safe City is a tech platform available on iOS, Android, and on your desktop. And it's an anonymous, safe, and accessible way of reporting sexual violence. We have currently 54,000 unique reports shared on a platform. We're also an open data source of visualization and analytics that help you explain the problem on the local level. As you see in the image, this is an image of Safe City, so you can really zoom into the map and check where are the hotspots of unsafety in terms of sexual and gender-based violence in your location. And through that data, we allow for multilateral action, which increases individual and community engagement and also helps with institutional accountability. And based on Safe City, I brought some statistics. So we talk a lot about how 1 in 3 women will suffer sexual violence at least once in their lifetime, or that 80% of cases of sexual and gender-based violence will not be reported. And in fact, 74.2% of survivors who shared their stories with us said that they will not and did not share their stories with the police. And it's really interesting because 40% of all of the cases that we received through Safe City, their survivor was on the street when the violence occurred, and 31% were on their way from or to work or school. So this also helps us understand that violence is not occurring inside a specific space. And even if we bring that to online violence, it might not be into a specific chat room, as Tracy talked about in the research as well. You know, people were moving from room to room on Discord, and that violence was occurring in maybe a separate space, right? It's not a one specific location. But one really important statistic that we have is that 43% of survivors did not change their behavior after the incident. So they're suffering these horrific things, but they're not changing how they move, how they access technology after the fact. So that leads us to the question, again, how do we make spaces safer and accessible for women by using this data and technology? So we use 2 main approaches. One is the policy approach, where we'll work with institutions and address specific unsafety issues. And we have the survivor approaches, where we do on-ground programs, we make brochures, but specifically, I will focus on the part that is designing technology that is survivor-centric. So I have a few studies that I'll go by really fast. So for example, and when we talk about the policy approach, in the Philippines, in Quezon City, we saw a rampant number of sexual violence happening. The government wanted to take action, but lacked the information. So we were able to collect that information alongside the government, identify those patterns. And one really crucial thing that you'll see throughout is that we needed community engagement for those safer spaces. So to bridge the gap, we had to do community engagement. We had to talk to people. We had to kind of mix also with the survivor-centric approach. And with the data, the government could implement some safety measures. Similarly, in Kenya, in Nairobi, we had a lack of a community voice. We had no space for education. Child abuse was completely normalized, and there was a lack of connectivity. So we implemented an offline method that went through the online method later on. And by doing, again, the connection between the survivor-centric approach and the policy approach, we created school sessions where we talked to these girls, and we did a collaboration with the church where men and boys could be educated about sexual violence. So by bridging, again, these 2 steps, we were able to start to create that community where they talked about it and even implement some safeguarding policies within the schools. And in Brazil, we worked in 2 regions, in Recife, in the southeast of the country, and in São Lourenço, a really small city in the central part of the country, where we saw that there was an immense machista culture. The effects with climate change were immense. and people could see the issue, but they couldn't really explain it. So through the data, we could identify the patterns of abuse that people just really couldn't explain it and take that to the government. So again, we were bringing that voice, but through data that was citizen driven. And then on the other hand, we also created our Safe City AI enabled chatbot. So talking about the positive sides of AI. Vera is launching, and I have a quick video that will scroll up on how do you use it. But Vera came as a complement to the Safe City app. It was a new way for users to share their stories. Many users said before that they missed a human touch, and we worked really hard to provide that human touch. So we used and explored and tested and tested and tested many times supportive phrases and encouraging triggers that could give the survivor the space and the safety that they needed. And we also integrated, and we're testing this right now, we're testing an integration with ChatGPT within the conversation where we can identify some of those trigger words to provide the survivor with specific resources based on what they suffered and where it happened. And again, talking about those learnings and takeaways, and we have tested and tested and tested to the point where we could get to somewhere that I could say that it's a little less biased, right? We tested and educated our model enough where it's now understanding the type of violence, where it's happening, and how it can help the survivor rather than victim blame the survivor. So these are some of our learnings and takeaways. I'll stop presenting right now, but I hope this at least brought some light and maybe to see some of the positive sides of AI and how we can do that policy integration and that regulation through positive solutions as well. So yeah, thank you so much for giving me the space.
Thank you, Camilla. And thank you for ending on a positive note. I feel like it's the end of the year and everyone couldn't do with a positive message. I really liked how you drew in your presentation on the kind of cross-section between online and offline violence, and how in fact what we're witnessing, or what a lot of women and girls are experiencing, are not kind of bespoke or separated acts of violence. It's more of a continuum of it happening in quite different contexts. And also within the online space, it can also be across different platforms. So, I think it's really important to appreciate that I think our lives these days are quite integrated between what once was perhaps offline and what is now online. And I certainly have felt for a long time that that is not quite reflected in regulatory spaces, that there is still this strong separation. So I was wondering, with all the amazing work that you've been doing, whether you got any sense of how this data landed with the police, the law enforcement, law and policy makers, how have they engaged with it, and whether they actually took on board the evidence that you provided. Sorry if it's a bit of a cheeky question.
No, it's an amazing question. Thank you, Olga, for asking it. It's a lot about bridging the gap, and what I talked about. You have to bring the data not as you know everything, but rather as a source of information. So as I said, in the Philippines, and here in Brazil, where I could follow along really closely, the government and the police, they know about the issue. Sometimes their vision about sexual and gender-based violence can be very restricted to rape or domestic violence. So the way that we do it and by removing the focus from a case specific and rather through more statistical perspective, and saying 80% of the people from this neighborhood feel unsafe at this intersection, and we could identify it is because of illegal access to drugs and alcohol. that's very actionable to the police and that's very actionable to the government. And we put ourselves in the position where we're here to support you and to provide training and to provide that interaction. So it's a long process of work and getting them to accept the data, but at the same time, whenever the outcome happens and we see an increased perspective of safety in a specific location, it's of course they get really happy, and of course we get really happy because we definitely see the increase in safety.
Absolutely. And I think, what we want to see is more kind of research and evidence-led law and policy making, because I certainly believe that, this is the way to go, to actually observe and listen to what is actually happening to women and girls, how they are experiencing those harms, whether it's in online or offline spaces or integration of both. And then design laws, policies, responses based on that. It doesn't make always for a very comfortable journey, because it makes people kind of also reevaluate certain assumptions and perhaps learn about experiences and experience of various spaces that are quite new. But I think definitely it makes for a much more responsive law and policy making at the very least. So no, thank you for that. It was absolutely fascinating. And so I think we're now at the end of our time for presentations. So I just wanted to say thank you once again for offering us a space in your meeting today to share those reflections and this research. I've been looking at the chat. I know Tracy has already shared some links. If there are any follow-ups, I'm sure we can provide links to research as well. So thank you so much for offering us that opportunity. I just wanted now to hand over to Jillian for Q&A.
Thank you, Olga. And I want to say thank you so much because I do know you have to leave, but we will continue Q&A with all the panelists. If you have a question for any of the panelists, please raise your hand and we'll call on you to unmute yourself right away. We do have questions from the chat that we're also monitoring. So to start off with, I do see Cynthia's hand up and I am looking to see if there's somebody else, if my colleagues can help me.
Shayla's hand is up as well.
Oh, super. Thank you. So if Cynthia and Shayla would like to go first, please unmute and go ahead with your question.
Thank you. This is a fabulous presentation by all of you, but I was particularly struck in the last, Camilla, about, and for all of you, about the online platforms in terms of older women are victims of sexual violence and a lot of forms of violence and abuse and neglect of their access because of the lifetime of discrimination for them. And I just wondered if you had any innovative thoughts of how to reach out, because 74% who will not talk to the police, I would guess that's probably much, much higher for older women. And if we don't break the cycle, I know it's a lifetime, but there are a lot of older women who are still victims there, and how we might overcome that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Jillian, could I go ahead and answer the question? Yeah, okay. So thank you, Cynthia, for your comment, and thank you so much for your question. Yes, in fact, we have seen a little bit of an increase in reporting through Safe City app of older women, but statistically, it's still a very small amount of reports that we do receive to make any recommendations that are specific to older women. But that was one of the reasons why we decided to implement Vera. We understand that for a lot of people, for older women and for women who maybe have more of a digital difficulty, it's hard to sometimes use an app, right? And we did a lot of research, and since a lot of our work is based in India, that's why we decided to create a WhatsApp chatbot that really looks like a conversation. Vera poses the questions to you, and it's really simple for you to go through the flow of the conversation. So of course, as I said, we're testing and testing and testing, and hopefully this is a solution that can definitely reach older women, because I do see and I do understand that older women are suffering violence, different types of violence, or perhaps the same types of violence, but in terms of statistic, that is missing. So thank you so much for bringing that up, because it's definitely a super important topic.
Thank you both. And I'm going to take two questions from the chat, which has been very active today. Amy Brandt asks, how does terrorism intersect with AI and violence against women? How can we curb the spread? Specifically thinking about libs of TikTok and the Proud Boys. And Janet Palafox asks, can we please have the reports that are mentioned in these presentations? And are there any reports that look at the level of violence and AI bias amongst the different platforms of FB, X, Instagram, etc.? This question is open to all panelists.
I'll start with the AI and terrorism question. I'll let Paula maybe weigh in on the bias and cross-platform studies. But obviously, artificial intelligence has made it much easier to create content. So anybody who's experimenting with AI in their own work life understands how realistic it can look. So this is also being utilized by bad actors who want to manipulate and, let's say, shape public opinion about specific events. So you definitely have that. I also think, like I talked about in my presentation, just the way that social media brings lots of different groups together can make some groups look much bigger than they actually are. Like in the old school town square idea, if you've got one lunatic over in the corner spouting all sorts of hateful content, you can visually see with your eyes that it's a fringe point of view. Online, you don't get that sense of a fringe point of view. And this is what we discovered in the manosphere. Being surrounded by groups of men that all look at women in these incredibly violent and hostile ways starts to shape your perception that that is the way that it really is. So I think that there are some problems, like the scale of that is not going to go away. So this is why literacy campaigns, technology literacy campaigns, talking with young people about the content on social media and sort of making them aware of how community formation works online is probably one of the biggest things we can do to kind of deal with it. And I'll move on to the other panelists now.
Paula, would you have anything to add?
Yeah, so in regards to looking at cross platforms and bias across different platforms, I think now there was a lot of work looking at these issues in Twitter, since now it is harder to get data. I think it is expected that now it will be looked at other different platforms and it will be less centered in Twitter. But there are, I would say that most of the works that I'm aware of and looking at this issue, it has been looking at these problems in Twitter data, and now it will be more. But I'm not that aware of works that look at the cross-platform issue. So, and since now, as we said, our lives are more, it's happening in different chats and platforms and everything. It's important to analyze differences and maybe how users are interacting in different platforms in the future, but it hasn't been so far that common practice. So
Thank you. I see that there are a lot of hands up as well, so I'm going to try and get to as many as possible. So I'm going to call on Sheila and on Jean and Jumani. If you could please unmute yourself and go ahead with your questions. The panelists will take all three questions together.
Thank you, Jillian. Thank you to the excellent speakers here. I'm Shaila Rao Mistry, and I would like to make reference to the different populations of women that are impacted by online harassment, and that includes women in high-profile positions who are being harassed in this way and not coming up to take leadership, and also mention harassment of girls and children. And one of the issues with the online harassment is that they can never get away from it. In the past, if they were bullied, harassed in school, they could get away from it. But now with the online, it follows them everywhere. So keeping that in mind, my question is this: how do we work harder or work smarter on prevention of such occurrences? Whether we use the law, which I know there was legislation in the UK. I'd like to hear how effective that was, and I'm hearing that it was not so effective. So we can use the law. How do we use the AI platforms themselves to monitor such harassment? If they don't exist right now or they're not strong enough, how do we create them? So an AI can detect that a girl is being harassed or someone in their job is being harassed. There's that. And then also we need to include what are the penalties once and if you catch the perpetrators. What are the penalties that we are talking about? Generally, it seems they get away with. First of all, nobody goes after them and get away with it. So it seems also to point to the fact that we need more women to be writing the programs for the AI and so on, that this part of protection of women and vulnerable groups is part of the design. And since many of us have the technical background, I think that's an important place to work on. Thank you so much.
I can speak to the difficulty of recognizing some forms of hate and aggression computationally, if we're talking about that. So this is something that came through in Joseph's report as well. A lot of times intersectional hate is about who's speaking to whom and in what context, right? And that's something that machines have a difficulty picking up on. Now, Joseph has spoken about how generative AI in his early experiments has been a little bit better at spotting some of these contextual details, but the cost of running that kind of analysis and having it running regularly on a social media platform is going to prevent companies from doing it in that way. You have human moderators on some social media platforms like Reddit, where that's more like community-focused online groups that take on some of that work. But again, this is very the standards are not there, it's very intermittent and unspecific. So a lot of that, when you talk about preventing this in the first place, doing that at scale is going to be difficult. Also, I think the estimate is about 50%. You can capture at most 50% of what people, hateful speech that people are saying online to other groups of people. And there's always going to be new groups of people who are the recipients of hate. So that's the difficult part. I think if you want to prevent it, one of the challenges is that the business model of social media platforms is not compatible with protecting women's safety online. And that is something that the different regulators in the places where these platforms have their headquarters or have a headquarters, those countries need to be stepping in the ring and telling these companies, if you cannot reduce the amount of harm to women on your platforms, then you can't operate here. It doesn't really solve the problem, of course. We know people have VPNs, they can access the internet from wherever, but I think it's really kind of getting the national regulation to align with the technical challenge.
Thank you, Shaila, and thank you, Tracy. I'm going to call on Jean and Jumai, keeping in mind that we just have 5 more minutes for questions, and I'd like to get as many people to be able to speak their minds. So Jean and Jumai, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My question really is about maybe Kamala more than anyone else, identifying all forms of violence. Now, the reason I'm asking that is because I agree. Someone has mentioned about the normalization of violence. And the scenario that happened to a colleague and I was a master's degree educated person came in because she wanted help with work stress. But when she described her life, she started describing torture and human trafficking and pornographic victimization. So how do we use the term capturing all forms of violence? I'd like to know, like, if you have a solution or if you have an experience, anyone has an experience of how you do that. Thank you for the great conversation.
Thank you, Jean. I think that's such an important question. First, I want to say that I'm really sorry regarding that person's experience. That sounds horrific and tragic. I think every day new ways where people are getting harassed and being violated are born, right? There's several different ways and different angles, and each perpetrator may act in a different perspective. But what we do and through Safe City is we try to map that out through some specific types of actions that are being taken towards that survivor. So if we're seeing a specific angle where that person is being tortured, that person is being beaten up, we put that under, you know, sexual assault. If the wording that they're suffering are in a cyber crime or in a hate message is related to their body or comments about them, we put that under commenting, and so that's how we separate. But of course, I think there is a need, and maybe that's another way where AI can definitely help out, is understanding what new things are coming up and new combinations of types of violence that are showing up. So we're always on our toes and trying to improve when we say we map all types of violence. Hopefully we can get to that at some point. I hope I answered your question. And yeah, I don't know if any of the other panelists would like to say something.
We'll move on to Jumai's question. And if somebody from the back can spotlight Dr. Mialong, we'll take her question as well.
Thank you very much, Camila, for the very wonderful presentation. I stated this on the chat room about what we were told in Zambia recently during our conference. Men in some communities in Zambia are not supposed to have telephones. That is a prelude to promiscuity. So I'm asking, if they don't have access to telephone, how will they report when they are being violated, and what can we do as CSW to see how we can carry the advocacies to rural African communities where women are even stigmatized for owning a phone that is what they're supposed to be using for empowerment and also reporting violence against them. Thank you very much.
If we can take Dr. Mialong's question and then answer both. Thank you. You just need to unmute yourself, Doctor.
Thank you. I'm so happy Ken attended this time about artificial intelligence. Hi. So that is the wonderful presentation. I'm the wonderful instructor in early UTMB, and we do lots of dementia and aging study. And we would like to help especially the woman who with the dementia. And we find the artificial intelligence too smart to use for the dementia. And I would like to know about any decision or the future plan. We don't use the open data for artificial intelligence. We use closed data to protect the people not too get used to or really know about the APP application or know about the artificial intelligence, but still can use kinds of things to protect them, especially if they are the senior women. Thank you for your take care about my questions today. Thank you.
If I could jump in just about the last question, I think I'd leave the first question to one of the other panelists because I don't know a lot about reporting procedures, but I do know that the director of our lab, Professor Harath Alani, he's been working on some tools, some AI-related tools that can help recognize and spot some behaviors that are associated with dementia, also with bipolar. So like those are things that we're reviewing so that the person, the individual, can make some advanced directives before the problem gets more difficult about what they want to have happen when these things occur. So in the case of bipolar, maybe it might be if the tool notices that you're spending more than you would normally be spending or going on like a binge of spending, it might send a message to you to tell you to call your bank, or you might even make a decision with your bank to close your account until you check in with them. So like I think these kinds of tools that can sort of monitor what's happening in the background could be very helpful. And then signposting people to different tools and solutions that they do understand and relate to on a daily basis.
Thanks, Tracy. If Paula or Camilla would like to take the previous question.
Sure, I can take the previous question. The first thing that I wanted to say was that we do have a community member in Zambia. I'd be happy to connect you with them. They might be able to help and work together in gathering that information and help collect the stories of these survivors. And secondly, I want to throw back to the Kenya case study where we took offline forms and then later on transferred them into Safe City. I did see your comment in the chat about how women owning phones is stigmatized, and I cannot even imagine how that is. But we do created this what we call a talking box, which is basically a metal box that we place in bathrooms or private spaces in public spaces. So that means that it's within a stall inside a bathroom. So you close the door and in there you have some sort of a private space. You can write what happened to you, not put your name to make it anonymous. And then we have one trained volunteer in that school or from that community that has a key to that metal box, and then they collect those stories once a week and then upload them into Safe City to be taken into consideration for data analysis and then later on advocacy campaigns. So I think this is a really great example to say that there are several ways to be very creative and map violence and give people a voice and the voice that they need. And later on that data can be used to train a model that will then provide resources like Vera, or that can identify hateful speeches on social media. So definitely, if you're interested, reach out to either me or Jillian. We're happy to connect you with our community member in Zambia, so you can work together. Thank you, Jillian.
Thanks, Camilla. And I recognize there are a few more hands up and questions in the chat box, but at the start we had moved UN Women to the end. And so Johannes, I believe, is here and is waiting to do his update to the group. So I'm going to have to pause questions, but my team and myself have taken down questions from the chat. We look through the recordings and we'll pass back any additional questions. This presentation, as well as the questions and documentation, will be shared in the follow-up newsletter, so rest assured you'll get it. But I do want to thank Tracy, Paula, and Camilla so much for sharing your time and expertise today and fielding all the questions. I do appreciate each of you. Happy holidays from our behalf, and I will pass back to Ivy, and if Johannes can come on.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. Yes, Jillian and Olga as well, Tracy, Paula, Camila. It's obvious that this topic is a hot topic, and that's why NGO CSW is also calling for this to be a standing agenda of CSW, because we think gender-based violence, violence against women and girls can't be discussed enough, and it has to be talked about and taken action on, actually, even more importantly. So Johannes, I'll hand it over to you for updates.
Thank you so much. And I wouldn't want to take away from that important discussion, so I'll try to be brief. Thank you so much for the invitation to provide a few updates from UN Women about CSW preparations, including upcoming deadlines. And good afternoon, good evening, good morning to all colleagues. It's great to be here. Just to highlight a few points. So the organization of work for CSW, the program of the formal meetings, has been published on the CSW website. I'll post the link into the chat in a moment, but this is basically now online and confirmed. So that's out, and it will basically consist of the opening of a ministerial segment in the first days, then the general discussion, and then there will be several interactive dialogues that you will see when you download the program or look at it, dealing with different topics, including CSW revitalization. And I just wanted to mention that we're looking forward to the contributions from civil society to these interactive dialogues and also to the general discussion. And closer to the session in late January, civil society organizations will be able to express interest to give a statement during the general discussion or to make an intervention during the different interactive dialogues. That expression of interest will be online on the CSW website. And I hope we'll have a chance also then in January again to meet and to then discuss that opportunity. We would also like to invite civil society organizations to send Beijing Plus 30 parallel reports. As you know, this is a different process from the written statements that you have been submitting. Thanks so much for those. But for all the review years, and now it's this year it's Beijing Plus 30, we would like to invite civil society organizations to send parallel reports. There is a page for that on the CSW website, but we would basically ask to send your parallel reports to the email address cso.beijing30@unwomen.org. Let me paste that into the chat as well. And to please send these parallel reports, if possible, by the 15th of January. We'll be trying to put them out on the website as quickly as possible so that they can be shared before the session. Basically, the guidelines for parallel reports are similar to those for the statements. So if reports contain discriminatory or abusive language or language targeting individuals or group, then they will not be published. Also, if they include names or contact details or information of any individuals, the references to individuals will be removed to protect personal privacy. We would ask you to please submit the reports in one of the official languages of the United Nations, either Arabic, Chinese, English, French, Russian, or Spanish. And the reports will be published on the CSW website in the language received. We would also like to ask you to please submit the final versions of the reports so that we can be sure to submit and to publish the final version. And of course, as always, you're strongly encouraged to submit joint reports, and we'll be happy to post these reports online on the CSW website as they come in. Let me paste the link into the chat, where you will also find these guidelines. And then once reports are being posted, they will be available on that page. Finally, an important deadline also coming up in January is for registration or for the approval of registration. So by the 24th January, we would ask organizations to please approve all the registrations of their representatives for the formal session for the CSW. We are happy to see that there are more than 4,000 NGO representatives already approved by their organizations for the session. And we expect many more to come, but we would kindly ask you to please make sure that all the approvals, all the registrations, all the approvals are in the Indico system before the deadline of 24 January. And of course, if you have any issues or any questions concerning the registration, please email our support address csw@unwomen.org. Let me also paste it again into the chat. Or for example, if organizations have issues with approving their representatives, please don't hesitate, please reach out to us. So we don't manage the Indico system, but then we can try to facilitate and to resolve any issues that may be there with the tech support of the Indico system. Lastly, and I'm conscious of time, but lastly, I also wanted to point out that in previous sessions, we have to we have seen fraudulent invitations and fraudulent links to CSW fake websites. So please, if you receive any invitation to participate in CSW, if you're not sure if this is a legit application, a legit website, please do not hesitate to reach out with us to confirm. Again, to the email address csw@unwomen.org, and we'll be able to then take it from there. So I think that's it for today. Wishing you happy holidays, a healthy new year, and looking forward to seeing you in January. Thank you.
Johannes, and thank you for UN Women Civil Society team and all of your support throughout. And yes, all the fraudulent letters like CSW, you should never have to pay to attend a conference at the UN. And so that's already a big red flag. Please, everyone, be careful with those types of requests. And I know there are lots of questions. We're over time. Should we take? Is it CSW?
I just want to know where the link is. I didn't see Jonathan put the link into the details about the parallel report. I saw the email, but not the link to the details.
That's my question as well. He just gave an email, the link.
Sorry, let me just put it in again. Oh, sorry, I didn't probably put it in. Can you see it now? It's
do it. Thank you, Johannes. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I was also looking for the dates for the ID seminars. Do we have those yet, Johannes?
Not sure which seminars you're referring to.
Oh, the
interactive dialogue. Sorry, the interactive dialogues will be during the 2 weeks of the session. So they will be part of the CSW program. Some of them will be in the first week, and many of them will be in the second week of the CSW. But if you have a chance to go to the CSW website to download the organization of work, then you will see the times and the dates of those interactive dialogues. And to sign up for those interactive dialogues, to express interest, that will be, we don't have any fixed date yet. It usually comes at the end of January. So we'll be able to let you know the dates closer to the session in the new year. But usually it's in around the 20th, 21st of January when the interactive, when the sign up for the interactive dialogue and the dialogues and the general discussion starts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it something Johannes can respond to, please?
I had a question at the CSW in Geneva for the Beijing Platform for Action. There were presentations by different groups on a specific issue, and I was wondering if you presented a workshop on a specific issue, if that could also be sent in as a report.
I would say absolutely. There's no limitation or restriction on the parallel reports topic. So whatever is relevant for the Beijing +30 process, please do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So just a clarification, Johannes. if they were presented to the regional review meeting, it doesn't necessarily mean it was automatically sent to.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So that's a so that's a separate process. So please do share also the reports that you have been submitting to the regional briefings and meetings.
Great.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Johannes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays and New
Year.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. It was lovely.
Excellent job, Ivy and Pamela.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
If we can turn on our cameras as we always do and wish everyone a
Bye, everyone. It was amazing. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Holidays, everyone. Stay safe.
Bye. Thank you.
Navidad.
Bye.
Adiós.
Bye.
Feliz
Bye,
Navidad.
everyone.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Bye.